Welcome to the Suffolk Walking Festival podcast, where we guide you around the footpaths and bridleways of Suffolk to discover what makes this county so very, very special. I'm David Falk, the director of the Suffolk Walking Festival, and in each episode of this podcast, I'll be meeting someone who shares our passion for walking in Suffolk. In this episode, I'm going for a stroll with award-winning novelist and nature writer Melissa Harisson, whose hit podcast, The Stubborn Light of Things, is based on her daily walks in rural Suffolk. We meet at National Trust, Sutton Hoo. I love the sound. Well, I'm with Scout, is it?
It is.
I'm with Scout, whose owner is Melissa Harisson. And Scout is desperate to go for a little run, I think. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me. We're going to go for a walk around Sutton Hoo, which I think we're going to go for, is it a couple of miles we're going to go for?
6 kilometres.
So it'll take us, what, a couple of hours-ish, thereabout.
Good girl. Sit. Good girl.
Very obedient.
Up to a point.
Up to a point. Melissa, we've walked down from the visitor centre down through a valley where there were some daffodils. Hello.
Scout, come, sit. Sit.
And we've ended up down by the River Deben itself. And it's immediately we've changed landscapes. It's just changed completely from where we were before. I think that's something I find about Suffolk. It is a very varied landscape. Do you find the same? Yes,
and I think it's something that people don't realise. They think that it's all agricultural and then coast, and actually there's sort of micro habitats all over the place, and some of that's to do with land use and wealth distribution as well. So there's whole bits of Suffolk that aren't very productive in terms of agriculture, and until we take them all over, drain them and kind of find ways to farm them, they're little lost kingdoms. Places like Icon, which is just strange and magical, and has remained like that because access is so difficult, and it would be very difficult to get heavy machinery in there or anything like that, so it's been preserved.
We're lucky in that way. There's quite a lot of ancient woodlands as well across the southern part of Suffolk. Groton Woods, which is just near Kersey, and it's full of ancient cherry trees and pollarded limes. It's just gorgeous, actually.
Places like Staverton Thicks,
it's
with
magical.
its extraordinary ancient oaks, and then those hollies, which are sort of twice as tall as the oaks.
I was reading somewhere they are some of the tallest hollies in the country.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very strange little micro habitat. It's not really repeated I don't know if it's repeated anywhere in the British Isles.
No.
It's very odd.
I feel quite sort of shrunken when I'm in there. I feel like I'm in another world.
As we were walking, we were talking about the white roe deer I saw the other day, and there's supposedly a white deer in Staverton Thicks.
Oh wow!
Which just sounds the perfect place for it. It's a little medieval, magical kingdom.
I'd want to get there early morning with the morning mist, see the white deer amongst those trees. I think that would be like you've just disappeared into Narnia, wouldn't it? It would
completely.
be magical. I always think with Suffolk there's kind of different zones to it. You've got the coastal zone that everyone heads to and enjoys and loves, but then as you get inland you get this sort of middle part of Suffolk where it's much more sort of rolling natural landscape and those ancient woodlands. And then an area that I find very special is the west of the county as you get towards an area called the Brecks.
Yes.
Is that an area you know quite well?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, parts of it.
It's similar to the coast because it's got those sandy soils. So we were talking a little bit walking down here about rain and how dry it's been in this part of the county, and over in the Brecks, if it rains, the rain just disappears.
Yeah.
You can have torrential downpours and it just vanishes into the soil. It just goes.
Yeah.
But you're left with this amazing landscape of plantations, great big heathlands as well, which is really special.
Yeah, and that's where you get birds like nightjars do very well, and woodcocks do very well in that kind of habitat, and they're really special. Some of these birds that we're losing hand over fist need those kind of
those environments.
Yeah, those kind of places that until quite recently I think we thought of as wasteland and waste ground. They're really precious.
And they're very rich. You talk there about declining species. I know I recently read your book, The Stubborn Light of Things, and you talk there about some of the declining species. Is that something that you're quite worried about?
I think we all need to be completely terrified about what's happening at the moment.
Yes.
On our watch, I'm 46. The last 40, 50 years, biodiversity in this country has plummeted. You can always pick out species that have bucked the trend. A lot of the generalists, so things like wood pigeons, magpies, have done well.
Yeah.
But generally the picture is one of staggering losses. And when you think about, it's the little things that bring it home for me. I've been looking for frog spawn in Suffolk for the last 3 springs and haven't found any.
Really?
And that terrifies me. It should be, every bit of stagnant water, every ditch should be choked with frog spawn as they were when I was a kid, and it's gone. When you do a drive at night in summer, when you come home, your windscreen, your headlights used to be splattered with insects.
Yeah.
They're clean now.
Yeah.
Those have gone, and everything that depends on them is going. The reason that we're losing, a lot of our insectivorous birds, often the migrants, is because there's nothing to eat. We need to be frightened, and we need to feel that sense of loss and grief, but we also need to not be paralysed by it. I think that a lot of the messaging around what's happening is trying to make us act out of fear and grief. And I actually think that committed, prolonged action comes from love, and it comes from delight and connection. And so that's the work that I try and do, is to engender that feeling.
Do you see an optimism in that then? Do you think that there is a way out of it, as it were?
We can turn this around. The question is, will we? We have the knowledge, we have the tools. The last year since the coronavirus started, we have shown how many big changes we can make when we're frightened enough, or when we have to and our backs are against the wall. I think that if we could take what's happening as seriously as that, we could do this. So there's huge amounts of optimism, but also the question is not can we, it's will we.
It's interesting what you say. I think every generation has a different sort of baseline of what's normal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, shifting baseline syndrome it's called.
Is it?
Yeah.
I find that really interesting.
Yeah, so we don't notice losses that go on over several generations. We take what the state of wildlife was like when we were children, and we think that's the norm. We might notice the losses, like I've just been saying, a frog spawn or something, but we find it very hard to track that over a century, 2 centuries. If you brought someone like the poet John Clare back to life now, he wouldn't recognise the world that we live in. He would, he was horrified to see the losses that were happening
in his time.
Gosh. And he would be staggered what we've let happen.
But you see those just in a short span, don't you? I'm in my mid-50s now, but I remember as a child hearing hedgehogs all the time in our garden.
You'd hear them mating in spring, grunting and running around and snorting.
Sometimes you'd look out thinking, what on earth is that? Because it was such a strange sound. I can't remember the last time I saw a hedgehog. Well,
Ipswich is very good for hedgehogs, and Suffolk in general still has them, not in the numbers it should, but more, compared to other counties. And I think, there was a couple of studies that have been done recently that have shown the link between gentrification and habitat loss and biodiversity loss. So in a county like Surrey, which is where I grew up, as it's become wealthier, the wildlife has plummeted. Because people move in and they tidy everything up. Right, okay. And hard landscape, decking, paving over front gardens, because they've got 2 cars rather than 1. And there's a really interesting book by Benedict MacDonald called Rebirding. He talks about this habitat loss in villages. He compares a photo of a Suffolk village from, I think it's 1930s, and then one now. And the lack of bushes, shrubs and trees as it's all been tidied up. And he points out this is why there are no wrynecks, this is why there are no flycatchers, because habitat has gone that supported the insects and the invertebrates that they ate, and now we're left with wood pigeons and magpies. And you're right, again, that thing about different changing baselines. You remember sort of when you're young how much countryside there may have been around where you lived, and now potentially, where I was brought up in North London, that would have been suburbs almost on the edge of London with green fields beyond, and now it's not at all like that. It's very much been swallowed up. Very much swallowed up. Yeah. But then having said that, the dichotomy of urban areas are bad and the countryside is good, I think we need to question that as well. Cities can be incredibly wildlife rich. London is comparatively really wildlife rich. We're very good at gardening in this country, and we prioritise gardens in a way that other countries don't in their urban areas. There's a lot of parks, you see the Royal Parks, there's a lot of water in London, and I think if we give up and just say, well, you know, cities are for people and we can just do what we like, and actually we let go of a lot of things can live alongside us if we, you know, hedgehogs, if you cut holes in your fence and allow them access.
Simple things, yes. Like
and
that.
leave your garden to be a bit untidy, a log pile.
Well, I like those tips because that means I don't have to do as much gardening as I used to.
Win-win.
Yeah, it's a win-win. Much less garden. Basically, just one day a year, go in, prune a few things back.
And no slug pellets.
Oh no, I wouldn't touch those. No.
Yeah.
No, don't touch those. No. One of the species I read about recently that's had terrible declines was turtle dove. My wife and I were walking along the River Stour, and we heard one, and it was the most magical sound. Is it something you've come across?
That purring sound that they make, often in the morning in the sunshine. The first one I ever saw in real life was in my home village, and I had just been for a viewing of the cottage that I ended up buying. Went for a walk up the road with Scout and heard one, and it was sitting on the telephone wire just 30 yards or so up the road.
Magical.
So that felt like a sign to buy the cottage.
A good sign.
Which I did. And there's a Woodland Trust site nearby where they breed.
Oh, fantastic.
And nightingales do really well there as well. I was 16 singing nightingales there last year.
Amazing. It's the last week of April, although it's spring. I'm not sure it feels like spring at the moment. It feels a bit cold.
No, we're still in that nasty cold and dry snap.
It's not like last April, is it, in 2020? It's a bit different. They said on the news this morning it's been the frostiest April for 60 years, which I like the use of the word frosty because it gave it personality, which I thought was really interesting. I conjured up this image of a very frosty old man, but it's been quite cold. There's certain things you hear and see in spring, you know, that you see the daffodils in people's gardens, you hear a cuckoo and so on. What for you are the signs or the sounds that you hear and you think, we're into spring?
First blackbird.
Really?
First singing blackbird for me. I mean, January you often hear a song thrush, which is lovely, but they're kind of known for, you know, they'll also sing in November sometimes. They've got a tree with a lot of berries that they want to defend. So blackbird for me is a much more reliable, you know, that's right, it's happening, you know, it's usually kind of February time.
Okay.
And then obviously the chiffchaff, you know,
chiffchaff,
which is the first of well, it's usually either the first or the second migrant back, but it's the first one that we hear.
Okay.
And that's that very boring two note.
But you know what it is?
It's wonderful.
Yeah. I went on a course once with the Wildlife Trust over at Lackford Lakes, and it was a bird ID course, which was great. So we went out on a walk and they were identifying birds, and it was wonderful because you start to experience the landscape in a very different way. You're not just using your eyes, you're using your ears. And as we were talking, I can hear something chirping in the background. But they came up with ways to remember things. Chiff-chaff was quite an obvious one. But the blackcap, they said, was like two pebbles being struck against each other.
Oh, you see, I would have... Okay, yeah. Was that definitely blackcap?
I might be wrong now.
Not stonechat.
Stonechat. Well, it might be stonechat.
So stonechat, people usually say it sounds like two pebbles.
Yes.
And then wood warbler sounds like a coin spinning on marble.
Oh, okay. I remember that one.
And then chaffinch, for me, I always think it's like a ball bouncing on a table and then dropping onto the ground.
I love it. I read somewhere somebody describing the sound of a wood pigeon as if it's saying, "I'm so boring, I'm so boring," which I thought was very sad.
Right, they annoy me, those birds. I try to be very, you know, I'm a friend to all the animals, but they do get on my nerves.
Okay.
And they sit on my chimney and coo down my flue, which is, you know,
that could be the title of a book.
Just a bit much.
Coo down my flue. That's funny. We get them a lot in the garden. We've had a lot of goldfinches in our garden.
Distant playgrounds.
Ah, is that what it is? Yeah.
That's what they sound like.
Distant playgrounds. They do chatter away. But it is interesting when you hear things like the great tick sort of sounds like it's saying teacher,
yeah.
which is fantastic.
Yeah. And the yellow hammer, which is a little bit of bread and no cheese.
Yes, that's a good one. And then you were saying earlier actually about hearing nightingales, which have quite a different song, don't they? It changes.
It's very variable. They've got a lot of song phrases. I think they've got about 2,000 different phrases. A good fit singing male.
Wow.
And the complexity of their song is related to their fitness as a parent.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So a male with more phrases and more inventiveness, they've shown it does correlate to more nest visits with more food, more high quality food.
I heard some time ago that birds in London sing louder than birds elsewhere because they're competing with the noise.
Well, birds all over the place have been able to sing more quietly in lockdown because they're not having to compete. All of our anthropogenic noise, aircrafts and industry and whatever, which is really good for them because it means they're expending less energy, and it also means that they've been able to use the lower parts of their registers. And there was a study that looked into, I can't remember what the species was, but it showed that they were singing now as they used to sing in the 1960s.
Oh wow, how interesting.
And as we start up again, they'll lose that again. It's a great shame. You know, there's lots of hidden costs to wildlife of our activity.
Yes, for sure. But there's an interesting side to lockdown, and you know, the terrible 12, 13, 14 months we've just gone through with COVID pandemic and still terrible around the world, but there's this other sort of side to it of connecting with nature, I think. And there was a period last year where there wasn't the sound of cars or traffic. We're not far from the A12 and it's usually a gentle hum in the background, and I found last April and May sitting in the garden, you lost that. And you suddenly, as you were just saying, you could hear all the sounds of the birds, and people weren't doing the normal DIY either, so all of that sound had disappeared.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly peaceful. I think we have to turn right here, but I'm going to check the guidebook.
Do you want to check?
Yes, let me just get my hand. Melissa, I just recently finished reading your book, The Stubborn Light of Things. Thank you very much. And I just wondering, have you always had this interest in nature, or is it something that's sort of developed over the years?
Yeah, all my life really. I grew up in the 70s and 80s when kids were able to be much more naturally outdoors. There wasn't the same sense of stranger danger that we have these days, and there wasn't the same traffic danger either, and so kids were allowed to play outside unsupervised a lot more, and that was great. Just a privilege really, although it was normal at the time. We were quite an outdoor family, and we went outside, you know, as long as it wasn't tipping down with rain, we went outside in the morning and played outside all day. So I think you just grow up with a feeling that the outdoors is normal.
Yes.
And it's the place where you live and play.
Was there someone who sort of inspired that? Was it just being your family being outdoors? Was that where the inspiration kind of came from? Did you go for family walks? We
did a lot of walking on Dartmoor when I was growing up. My grandparents lived in Ashburton, so we used to spend our summer holidays on the moor and at Devon's beaches on the South Hams. Wow. Going for long walks. My dad was always in charge of the directions and the orienteering, so there was a lot of moaning, and he always wanted to go off in different directions and look at things like hut circles and stuff.
Oh, interesting.
So we'd spend a lot of time sort of wandering around in head-high bracken trying to find a lost stone circle and going, Dad, can we go home now, please? But you know, although we whinged about it a lot as children, it was a huge gift to realise that you can spend a whole day walking and that you might get rained on, but that you're fine, actually. You know, it taught so much resilience that you can be really tired and you might have a blister, but you get back to the car at the end and nothing bad's happened, actually.
It's magical,
and I think, you know, my friends who have children, a lot of them are teaching them that same kind of resilience of just getting on with it. And then there are parents for whom they want to protect their children from discomfort.
Yes.
So if children get tired or bored or hungry, that's immediately helped, and the child is taken out of that discomfort. And I can completely see that impulse. Who wants their child to be upset? But I'm really glad that I was, you know, not to the point of sort of danger or neglect, but we learned that, you know, it was okay that things didn't always go completely your way, and you had a nice day because of being able to put up with having wet feet. Or
it's having some freedom, isn't it? I know we grew up in North London, and our sort of piece of countryside was an old disused railway line sort of near the back of our house that led onto a golf course. That was our countryside, and we were just allowed to explore. And my oldest brother's an entomologist, and I think his love of the countryside came from that experience, even though we're in quite an urban environment.
Well, this is it. People forget that for kids, it doesn't have to be a beauty spot. It doesn't have to be a national park. You know, some of the woods that I played in as a kid, they weren't, you know, high quality. They weren't full of singing nightingales. They weren't hugely bucolic. But they were a sort of magical kingdom when you were a kid.
That magical kingdom thing, that really rings true. At the back of our garden was a fence. I used to climb over the fence, go through this bit of wasteland, you might call it, onto the railway line. I remember one day climbing over the fence and there's a red fox on top of this wood pile. And it was a real magical moment. And it's one of those moments that kind of, you stand back and it inspires you. So
I think, you know, those encounters with animals, especially if you have a moment where you look at an animal and you feel it looks back at you. And you are seen. You're not just the seer, you're being seen. And that can be really powerful.
Yeah, extremely. Well, last week we were at Redgrave and Lopham Fen, which is run by the Suffolk Wildlife Trust, fantastic reserve, and I was eyeball to eyeball with a common crane.
Oh, wonderful.
And they're quite tall, aren't they?
Yeah. Wow.
I think, Melissa, you definitely would be eyeball to eyeball with it.
I would.
It was more sort of at my shoulder height, and it looked at me, I looked at it, I yelped in surprise for my wife to come back to have a look at it, and at that point it took off. But actually seeing it take off in flight was magical as well.
My sister lives just outside Guildford in Surrey, and she had one circling over her house a few weeks ago, and she had messaged me and said that there was a crane, and I just thought it's a heron. You know, usually I get so many people saying they've heard a nightingale and it's November, you know, and it's a robin, or they've heard a cuckoo and I know it's a wood pigeon, you know. And so I was really cynical, and she sent me a photo and it was.
It really was. That's magical. Magical. I love it. Can I also ask you, you do nature writing and you write novels as well. I haven't read your novels, I do apologise.
There's no reason you should, it's not homework.
Okay, but I will. But does the nature writing seep into the novels as well? Or are the novels based on nature as well?
The novels are all heavily just full of as much nature as I can fit in. You know, the common thread with everything I do is trying to connect people emotionally and imaginatively to the natural world, because I think it's you know, it's just so important. It's important for us and it's important for the natural world as well. When I started writing, I didn't think that I was allowed to be a nature writer because I didn't think I was enough of an expert. So I wrote a novel called Clay that was set in a city. It was kind of based on South London where I was living at the time. And I crammed into it all the nature that I could to try and communicate to people this revelation I'd had that actually you can live in a city and be really, really connected to the natural world, and it can transform your experience of living in an urban area. So for me it's really both. And then the last novel that I wrote, All Among the Barley, that's set in Suffolk in the 1930s on an arable farm. And it was in the process of researching that novel that I was coming out to Suffolk a lot to do research and to see what the fields looked like at different times of year, and what things smelled like, what was in flower, you know, what was produced on different types of Suffolk soil. You know, I wanted to get it all right, and that was the point at which I fell in love with Suffolk and ended up moving here not long after the book came out.
And does the writing, I guess these things go hand in hand, does the writing inspire the learning, or was the learning that sort of inspires then the writing, or was it just all meshed together? It's
all mashed together. I try to follow my instincts, so when I'm starting a new book I have to know that there's enough there to keep me interested for sort of 2 or maybe 3 years.
Yes.
So I follow my nose down, you know, whatever avenues are feeling not just intellectually interesting, but have a kind of emotional charge to them. And I was really interested in the 30s because it just felt like this pivot point between a very sort of old-fashioned way of farming with lots of folklore and lots of, you know, pre-industrial methods, and then this new scientific farming that came in after the war with tractors. And there was a generation that went from one to the other. And a whole lost world, you know, that so much of that world is still here around us in the landscape, and we can walk around Suffolk and see the old barns, and we can walk around a village and go, here's the big house, here's the church, here's the rectory, here's the old school. It's all still there, but the world of it, the social world of it's gone completely. And those were its kind of dying years, and I think people felt that and knew it. The post-war generation really felt that something was going, and there was this huge surge in farming memoirs at the time.
Yes.
You know, it was as popular as nature writing is today, which is, you know, a real boom in publishing. And it was, I think, born out of that sense of trying to record something before it was gone, which is exactly what nature writing is doing today.
Yeah, and there's quite a wealth of nature writing. You join actually quite a group of people who've written about Suffolk or lived in Suffolk.
Adrian Bell.
Yes.
A.G. Street.
I'm currently reading Roger Deacon.
Roger Deacon, absolutely wonderful. Yeah, Notes from Walnut Tree Farm is just, yeah.
His writing is absolutely beautiful, but every word counts, if that makes sense. And I find that the same when I read your book as well. It's very pertinent, and you can relate to it very well. And the chapter I'm just reading, I haven't finished it yet, he's in Kazakhstan, which I went to in 2003, so I can relate to that.
Is that the chapter about apples?
It's fascinating.
Yeah, the depth of his knowledge. You know, I'm somebody who's very interested. I've got a good library, I'm very curious, and I've got a good memory, but his depth of expertise, you know, it comes through in everything that he writes.
And it's really beautiful. What I was interested in is, do you think there's something about Suffolk that draws writers to Suffolk, or is it just...
I think you could probably visit any county and find people who are very proud of the artists and writers that live there.
Yes.
Certainly I found a big community of writers here and visual artists. You know, you could say that it's somewhere that the past is very present.
Yes.
But it's still within striking distance of London, and a lot of people need that. You know, they need to have that connection to publishing companies or to art galleries.
Right.
And you can actually get on the train and be in London.
It's very accessible, isn't it?
Well, where I live is just outside the kind of comfortable commute, but it's still doable.
Yeah. In 2020, Melissa developed a podcast called The Stubborn Light of Things, in which she records her observations on daily walks around her Suffolk village. For anyone that's not listened to The Stubborn Light of Things, please find it, search for it, have a listen. It's absolutely wonderful. It certainly helped me through lockdown and inspired me to get out more and about and learn more about the countryside as well. Do you know, I was intrigued by the title, actually.
It's the last line from a poem by Alison Brackenbury, and all is explained in the first episode of the podcast.
Now funny, I've been listening to it backwards. Is that wrong?
You can listen to it in any order you like.
I tell you what, it's because the podcast channel I listen to, or the app I use, plays things in reverse order.
So you're travelling backwards in time from October to April.
Scout's been well behaved, Melissa.
She's been really good. She's been on the lead for segments, hasn't she, when we were near the pigs?
Yes.
And I could feel her resenting it. I could feel her resentment travelling up the lead to my hand. But as soon as I let her off, she's been pretty good. Yeah.
She's been very good. She doesn't bark or anything.
She's not lovely. A woofer.
Not a woofer. Oh, very pleasant. Been a joy, actually. We're walking in April. It's the last week of April. May next. I can't believe it's May next week, actually.
Gosh.
The year is rushing by. I do love spring. I'm going to say something that might be controversial. My least favourite season of the year is summer.
Interesting.
I could go on and on why that is.
Well, I think there's a period of absolute stasis in the middle of the year, isn't there? Sort of July, and there's just nothing happening. There's no firsts and lasts. There's no, there's nothing is changing at all, and it's the change in the countryside and cities too that pulls you through the year and pulls you through the seasons. If you're interested in the natural world, you start to notice your firsts and lasts, and you can compare them to previous years and think about why that might be, and that really roots you in space and time.
Yes, very true.
Watching a place change through the seasons is really important, and I think January and July are just, there's very little to note.
Not much happening. When we first moved up to Suffolk, I really noticed the change in seasons, especially the farming year. Seeing fields go from being ploughed to being cropped to being harvested and so forth, and also the change in season with nature as well. There's a lot of more native planting up here than you would have, say, in a city environment sometimes. Is that something you've noticed, sort of, do you find the seasons are more emphasised in Suffolk?
Certainly, if you live in a city, it's harder to be connected to the agricultural year.
Yes.
And, I've got all sorts of new firsts and lasts now, so when the oilseed rape is in flower,
Yeah.
when the wheat fields turn from green to that bluish colour.
Oh yes.
When barley, when the heads tip over, those are I've added to my year's moments. But I think you can be really connected to the seasons in cities as well. Things like blackbirds and cherry blossom. You can notice those wherever you are. And I think also social media is a great way to feel connected to other parts of the country and other people who are seeing and hearing things differently. And there are so many people out there who will tell you when the first migrant birds have arrived, at recording stations that are, they're going to see them a week or 10 days before you.
Yes,
and you can watch spring arrive in the south of the country and move north.
Yeah, interesting.
And, depending on who it is that you're seeing tweets or Facebook messages from. And I love that.
That is interesting. I say I don't like summer. The reason sometimes is because I'm not good at heat, and we're getting hotter and hotter summers. And I remember as a child the summer of 1976, which was legendary sort of as this very hot summer. Well, we seem to have those more and more frequently now, those hot, humid days. And things get sort of burnt off in the landscape a bit. The grass all turns sort of very brown and so forth. But I do absolutely love going into autumn. I adore autumn. I love the changing colours. I love the leaves as they fall down. I love that revealing of the architecture of the tree structure.
And there's a melancholy as well, isn't there, to autumn that I find really appealing. But I read somebody tweeted something a little while ago that I thought was quite revealing, and she'd said whether or not you enjoy autumn depends whether or not you looked forward to going back to school as a kid.
Well, I love school. There you go.
Well, so did I. So September for me, was always connected with quite a nice thing that I was quite happy to be doing, and I got a new pencil case and new uniform, and that was all quite nice. Whereas if you were a kid who hated school and wanted to stay
right, you remember that
at home or be outside in the fields or whatever, then you probably have a negative feeling about it.
That. And I probably shouldn't say this doing the job I do, but I do quite like it when the tourists have slightly left the landscape and I can have it back to myself, which is something I think we all do a little bit. We like places for ourselves, but I do get to know those hidden locations, which I won't talk about, but they're my places, or our places, my wife and my places, and we can explore those, and we can explore those more to our heart's content, I think, as autumn comes in.
I think there's a satisfaction, isn't there, about not just being a fair weather walker, that feeling of, like I was saying before, watching a place change through all of the seasons and knowing what it looks like in all weathers.
Yes.
And and that you can do in a city. I mean, I used to walk Scout on Tooting Common when I lived in London for over 10 years, and little things like, I remember one year a tree blew down, and it wasn't, they left it where it was because it's good for biodiversity, I imagine, and so the path had to divert around the tree, and then eventually the tree rotted away, but the path still had a bend in it, and I knew why, because I'd watched that happen. And that kind of, it gives you a rootedness, to be able to walk around and think, oh, well, there's a mud puddle here and it's drier this year than it usually is, or oh, the squirrels usually have a dray in that tree and they've moved it to the next tree. That depth noticing, I think, is a really human thing. This is the kind of knowledge that we used to need to have to survive, and then farmers have had for millennia.
Indeed.
That kind of close-grained knowledge of a place.
Yes, very much. And I totally agree with what you say about going back to places. There's a real pleasure in seeing the same location through the year, and even from one day to the next it can change radically. Yeah,
and that's been, I think a lot of people have discovered that during lockdown. People have been confined to their local areas and have watched now the whole cycle of a year.
Yes.
And I really hope that stays with people.
Me too. We know within the team I work in at the County Council, people are walking a lot more, and especially a lot more locally than they've ever done before. There's footpaths out there that I don't think I've ever seen so many footprints on them.
It's a great thing. There are some problems with footpaths being widened and with litter and things like that, and I hope we can smooth those out. But, one of the best ways I think that we can positively affect the natural world is by having a home patch, so our little area that we care about and we protect, and I think that can be more powerful than donating to appeals in other countries we're never going to visit because we don't want to feel guilty because we've seen an advert on telly that's made us feel bad. The idea that you protect the place you live, and you protect it not just for yourself but for the wild creatures that live there, for your wild community, that can be transformative, I think.
I used to work with someone who changed a phrase that was familiarity breeds contempt, and he changed it to familiarity breeds content, as in contentment.
That's lovely. That makes me think of Patrick Kavanagh, the poet, who was he thought he rescued the word provincialism from being a negative thing to being a positive thing, and you know, I think I agree with that 100%.
That's very true. And finally, I'm just going to mention that my absolute favourite season is winter.
Is it?
I like nothing more than a cold morning with a blue sky, and you wrap up and you're sort of encased in all your warm clothing with your woolly hat and your gloves on, and you go out, and we had snow not long ago, and just walking in the snow I think is the most pleasurable thing.
Do you know, I love winter and I love snow, but the winter just gone I found incredibly long. We had snow that lay and I loved it, and I was hugely excited for about 2 or 3 days, and then it lay for 8 days.
Yes,
and my cottage was very cold by the end of that period, and I was ready for it to go.
That would change things. Melissa, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Suffolk Walking Festival podcast. Thank you for bringing Scout along as well. It's been a joy walking with her as well. Good luck with all your writings as well. I will be buying more of your books to read, so thank you for that. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Melissa. The Suffolk Walking Festival is one of the country's largest and longest running walking festivals. The festival takes place every May with over 100 walks and countryside events across the county. Visit suffolkwalkingfestival.co.uk for more information, and follow us on Facebook for up-to-date news. Thank you to David Stainer and Scott Dolling of the duo Silbury Hill for the use of their music in this podcast.